Hello, fellow musicians. My name is Mavic. I am a professional independent music guitar player and part of a project called Gatas Verdes. In this short but informative video, what I'd like to inform you or give some information to you about is the color of sound for the guitar specifically. It doesn't mean that this cannot be useful for other musicians. It can be very useful for many musicians in the sense of giving you tips on how to get a better sound of your instrument through understanding the basics of sound. This video is divided in 4 main stages. The first stage is related to the basics of sound. The second stage is related to what the signal chain means, the effect chain means, and effect loop will be included into this section. On the third stage, we'll be talking about amplifiers, the different types of amplifiers, transistors and tube amps. And for the fourth stage, we'll be summing it all up and giving you a brief of everything that has been talked about, including some little extras on what new technology is heading for the guitar player. Okay, welcome to stage 1. In stage 1, we'll be talking about the basics of sound. Sound is based on acoustic methods. The acoustic method is conformed of 3 main stage processes, which is generating a signal that can be done by a vibration, by a sound, by a bump, by something that will generate signals in the air that will be propagated in waveforms. These waveforms will then further on be received by some kind of element called receptor. This receptor can be a transducer. A transducer is something that will change energy, because these waveforms turn into energy that will be transformed into electroacoustical energy. How does this happen on the guitar? The guitar, the vibration of the strings further on develop some kind of waveform that is captured by our pickups. The pickups are our transducers that will change that into electroacoustical transducer energy, and this energy will be passing through some kind of chain effect if you have one, or else will follow the chain signal and go directly to the amplifier. As soon as it gets to the amplifier, we'll go through 3 different stages in the amplifier. These stages afterwards will be sending the information or the signals to the speakers, and the speakers will be the transducers of the sound into an output signal, which will be something that you will be hearing with your ears. There are 3 main specific elements that can affect sound. These are the waveform of any signal, the frequency of the signal, and the amplitude of the signal. What is the waveform of a signal? Well, we can have a basic waveform like this one. This would mean just a basic signal going into an amplifier, and this could be modified by simply sounding like this. This is a different kind of waveform. The sound varies according to that waveform. If we talk about the frequency, frequency is the amount of oscillations that a signal can have per second. It's measured by hertz, and it can be low frequency or it can be a very high frequency depending on which range you're located in. The amplitude refers to what the volume is of the signal. We can have very loud volume, or we can have a very low volume for the signal. So that what happens with this? These 3 elements cause an effect on the kind of sound you're developing for your guitar. It can be based on different genres, or it can be based on your taste for a specific kind of playing or guitar you're using. So we're now into stage 2. We're going to talk about analog and digital devices. An analog device is that formed of knobs, buttons over an analog circuit. It basically works with voltages and amperes, electricity, all these kind of little things and details that sometimes us guitar players don't really know exactly 100%. But we do know about the elements of sound, so using or combining a good knowledge of the elements of sound, we can reach that specific sound we're looking for by just turning the right knob at the right amount value. Okay, so an analog effect is something that has certain differences from a digital effect. It has noise. It sometimes is difficult to control, but not impossible. It's sometimes worthwhile having it, maybe for this kind of genre you're playing or whatever it is you're looking for. And digital effects usually permit you or allow you not to have that noise or even suppress it if you can. And if you can even create it in a digital device. Digital devices are more use a lot more compact elements because it uses a whole lot of analog effects into just one box that can allow you to even make less money investment on what you're buying. So whether to use digital or analog effects, I think the answer is in you. The answer is in the guitarist and the taste of the guitarist and what your needs and priorities are for whatever project it is you're working for. So far we've spoken about the different elements of sound. We've spoken about the different elements that compose that sound, like the parameters of waveform, frequency, amplitude, and its effects over sound, and how each time we modify them, we can make something different out of the color of the sound we're looking for. Besides that, we realize that we have two types of elements or devices. We have analog and we have digital devices that can conform that sound or give us that certain tools we need to make changes over the sound we generate through the guitar, okay? So now let's talk about the change signal. The change signal starts with the guitar, a simple vibration of the string, passes through the pickups change that signal into an electroacoustical input that goes into a chain of effects. The chain of effects, as we mentioned, in this case we'll talk about the pedal board. This is the easiest way to show you because it'll turn digital as well. It applies for digital as well. When it passes through the chain of effects has certain rules in which it's the most proper way of making the adjustments over the signal on the from the guitar towards the amplifier. Once you make those adjustments accordingly on the chain of effects, then the output of that chain of effects goes into the input of the amplifier. The amplifier has three stages: preamp, tone control, and power amp. Okay? But once the signal gets here, we'll talk about this later, it makes a color that it has received amplified and goes through the speakers and makes the sound bigger. So how does this work? Let's specify what the chain of effect is. A chain of effect is composed of three main parts: the pre-gain stage, okay, a gain stage, and a post-gain stage. We're supposed to try and keep that chain order as a rule. We should try and do that. Indeed, it's not something that it has to be, because there's always the creativity of the guitar player that allows you to, in some matter, make changes accordingly to your needs or your priorities, as I mentioned before as well. Okay, but let's talk about the standard. Okay, the standard says that in the pre-gain effects, you're supposed to have the utility effects, the filters, all the intelligent processors, and in this case I'm talking about compressors, equalizers, tuners, wah-wahs, volume pedals. These can also be put out before the pre-gain effects, but they can be included as pre-gain effects order, okay? Intelligent processors would be something like the humanizers or the octavers or the pitch transposers. After that, we go to the gain effects. The gain effects are composed by distortions, fuzz elements, and after that we have the post-gain effects. Okay, now this is the really important one. The post-gain effects, that's where you locate modelers of the signals, such as like the chorus, the flanger, the tremolo, and after that the time-based effect, 100% time-based effect, which would be the digital delays. Okay, that's where they should be located. Now, why this order? I mean, why do we have to establish this order? Why is it a to be? Okay, electronically it's based because the gain of these effects accumulate as you start adding them up, and that will make changes, really big changes for the output signal. And another thing that sums up is noise. Okay, so some effects are more gain-based than others. So they are the ones, the more gain-based effects should be put in the end order of the chain, in order to not allow that maybe one effect that comes after will be affected by the previous one. Okay, so in my pedal board, for example, I have a wah-wah as a first initial start of the chain. Afterwards I have the tuner. After the tuner I have all the modulation effects, because I don't have any intelligent processors or any transposers or anything like that. So I enter to flanger, chorus, and I have a tremolo vibrato. After that I have the reverb, and the distortion is located as a gain effect. Okay, so whatever processes through here as I press the button, specific button that I need for the change or the color I'm looking for, based on some amplitude. Try to always keep the same amplitude on all your pedals, so that the signal will always keep the same track when it reaches the amplifier, and it will be amplified at that same moment. Okay, so after that it reaches the amplifier. The amplifier, I'm using the green channel still. We'll talk about the other channel in the next stage, and we'll talk about more about the stages of the amplifier. So right now what we're going to be looking at is the chain of effects. There's also something else important to mention here. We only don't have the chain of effects. We have chain of effect, and we have something called the effect loop. Now the effect loop is something that happens in the amplifier. It doesn't happen in the chain of effect pedal board itself. Okay, so what is an effect loop? An effect loop, as its name says, it's a loop. It's a loop that will happen after the preamp in the amplifier and before the power amp in the amplifier. It just makes sure that maybe like this device that has an output input, a send return, will be stuck to a send return in the amplifier, and it will be kept in that stage. Instead of going directly to the amplifier, it will make something like an overall effect chain for the whole signal of the amplifier. For example, we'll work on what happens when we use a chain effect. Okay, I have a normal situation right now here with the guitar. It has no effect. It's directly to the amplifier.